All right. Hello, everyone. This is the third neighborhood meeting for the Central Avenues Improvements Phase 2 project. My name is Nick Amatuccio. I'm the project manager with Bolton and Mink Engineering for this project. With me here tonight is City Engineer Eric Klingbeil, along with a few other staff from Bolton and Mink and City of Hopkins in the back. So we're just going to run through a presentation tonight going over the final design improvements. We're nearing the final design of the plans and about to go out to bids for contractors to bid on the project. So we wanted to share with you some things you've already seen probably, but some new things, updates to the plans from when we last met in the fall. Okay, so many of you, or probably all of you, know the project area by now. I believe it was on the back of the invite that you all received for this meeting tonight. But generally, the project area consists of the remaining avenues in the Central Avenues neighborhood that haven't been reconstructed to date. So that's everything, the avenues from 9th Avenue over to 13th Avenue, from First Street North up to Highway 7. It also includes a couple of east-west blocks of 3rd Street and 4th Street, and then some resurfacing, meaning just more of a maintenance and kind of more of a prolonging the life of the pavement instead of starting over on 2nd Street and 3rd Street North. This project will be constructed over 2 construction seasons, starting this year in 2025, this spring, and then concluding next year in 2026. So in addition to the obvious street improvements that are needed from the pavements that is the grading, the cracks and the settling pavement that you see, the poor drainage throughout the neighborhood, there's also old infrastructure under the ground. The sanitary sewer is old clay. The water main is old cast iron that's very brittle. This water main and sanitary sewer is coming up on 70, 80 years old. So it's reaching or past the end of its life cycle. So we're going to take the opportunity while we're ripping up the roadway on top to excavate down and replace all the underground utilities below with new plastic sewer and new ductile iron water main, and also upsizing the pipe of that water main for better fire flows. So we're proposing to do this on all of the avenues that are going to be reconstructed with the project. However, there's one block on 11th Avenue North between 1st Street North and 2nd Street North where the sewer is extra deep. Typically, sanitary sewer is about 10 to 12 feet below the ground surface. On this block, however, it's upwards of 20 feet deep, which would cause a larger excavation and more impacts to dig that up. So originally, with the feasibility report and preliminary engineering, we were proposing to trenchlessly rehabilitate the pipe, so put a liner inside the pipe and not have to dig up the roadway, at least not that deep. However, looking into it further through the final design process and doing some televising, some of you may live on this block where we reached out to get televising from inside the house into the sanitary sewer services. We found out that the condition of the pipe is even worse than we expected. The top 2 pictures represent sewer services to individual properties. The one on the left is a connection from the riser pipe that comes out of the main to somebody's service. And you can see that the joint is so offset that it's barely getting through the sewage. And then the one on the right is the connection to the main in the street, 20 feet down below the surface, where again, the connection is offset. You can actually see little rocks and soil where it's not even connected to the pipe anymore. And then pictures on the bottom are inside the main itself, underneath the street. You can see the multiple cracking and fractures in the picture on the left. And then there's a heavy sag on the picture on the right, meaning it's not at a consistent grade. It's actually sagging down, dipping down over the years, and the flow is just sitting there. You can see the high water level. That's not, shouldn't be happening in the sewer. So all these things are not feasible to fix trenchlessly. We actually had to go down and dig it up. So it was no longer cost effective or feasible to not dig it up. So we are gonna wind up excavating this sewer just like all the other blocks. And that is gonna end up being a little more impactful than the rest of the blocks just because of the depth of the sewer. You can see the profile at the bottom of this plan sheet right here. So what that means for the residents on this block is construction will last a little longer, probably a week longer for the utility work. And while all the other blocks, we require the contractor to backfill that excavation each night, each evening. So residents have access at night and over the weekend. We won't be able to do that on this block during the sanitary sewer work. So for roughly a week, 2 weeks, they're going to have to keep an excavation overnight. To the Constitution. Emily, can you mute everyone, please? And then, sorry about that. So they're gonna have to keep it open, otherwise they would have to spend the entire day digging back down, and it would take them a month to get it done. So there will be a week or two where we'll notify those residents and let them know they can't access their driveways. Luckily, there's not many driveways on this block, and even fewer that don't have a second access on the back alley side. But yeah, just wanted to go through that change. That was probably the major utility change on the project. Along with the main replacement of the sanitary sewer and water main, we're going to be replacing all this sewer and water services to each house. We've gone over this before, but just reiterating, we're going to be replacing the service from the main in the street to the right-of-way or property line, which is generally a foot or two behind the sidewalk. Beyond that, each property owner has the option to hire their own plumber, private contractor to replace the rest of the line to the house. This could be purely optional. You just might want to do it because you haven't ever done it before. It's original piping, it's old, but there might be material that you may be required to replace it if it's not meeting code, such as lead water services. I'm sure you heard about that in the news. We don't run into a whole lot of those in town, but we do run into a decent amount is Orangeburg sewer services. It's basically a pipe made out of tar paper. If it hasn't failed yet, it's going to fail very soon. So you want to replace it anyways. And we would let you know when we dig it up. We would let you know what's going on and give you contacts for plumbers you can reach out to who have done this work before. Sometimes they can do a trenchless rehab and not have to dig it up. But if it's easy enough path, they can just dig it up, and it's usually not too bad. But we would help coordinate that, and you could do it along with the project to help cut down on those restoration costs too. Something with the storm sewer that has been an addition. So we are adding a lot of storm sewer in the neighborhood, help with drainage, adding catch basin inlets, low points where the roads are currently flat. So everything should drain to the nearest storm sewer. But working with the watershed district, 9 Mile Creek watershed, we are actually required when we reconstruct and rebuild impervious surface, or the street pavement in this case. When you reconstruct over a certain amount, in this case it's an acre, and we're well above that, you have to treat some of the stormwater. And so one of the options to do that is create an infiltration basin, which is what we're showing and proposing with this project. So instead of directing all the stormwater down the main, down to directly to 9 Mile Creek, we're going to treat it locally and direct some of the stormwater off at 12th Avenue to a filtration basin right by Metzel Field, by the ball field. So what that means is basically we excavate down about 8 feet, and it's just going to be a kind of big swale, a big bowl where water will collect. It will be sandy soils beneath it. So it'll infiltrate. It won't be a pond. It'll be, most of the time, you'll just see mulch and some plantings. But after heavy rainfall, you will see water sitting in there for a while until it infiltrates into the ground. You can see we're going over the existing bullpen by the park. City staff are going to be moving that to a different location, and we'll have a little more room for that stormwater basin. So going into some of the street improvements, nothing's really changed with what we're actually doing with the streets. We're repaving everything, new concrete curb and gutter and everything. But did want to touch on the proposed street widths. That's been a topic that we've talked about at the last few public meetings, and just want to go through kind of where we started and where we're at. So during the feasibility process, what we had in the feasibility report and presented at the first and second open house we were proposing 28-foot wide streets on all streets. The existing streets are typically between 35 and 36 feet existing, which is wider than the normal residential roadway. And we've been reconstructing roadways at 28 feet wide recently. It seems to have been working. This is adequate for vehicles, for fire trucks, city work, public works vehicles. But we got some feedback that there was concerns with all the additional parking in the neighborhood, being nearby Main Street, a lot of renters in the neighborhood, being nearby the school, extra traffic. There was concerns that this might not be wide enough, that might cause issues with traffic flow and parking. So instead of proposing 28 feet wide streets on all the avenues except for 12th Avenue, that is proposed to stay at 36 feet wide because it's a state aid and truck route. And also 4th Street is staying a little wider too, at 34 feet. But we took that public input and increased 9th Avenue, both blocks that are being reconstructed, and then the 100 blocks, so between 1st and 2nd Street on 10th and 11th to 32 feet wide. And then the remaining blocks were widened out to 30 feet wide on 10th and 11th Avenue. I presented that at the public hearing back in November to council. There was still a little bit of concern on the remaining 10th and 11th Avenue blocks, especially that were only 30 feet wide instead of 32. And based on feedback and recommendations from council, we regrouped as a team and decided that we were going to increase all those blocks at 32 feet wide. So we're still narrowing everything down a few feet, but basically everything's going to be 32 feet wide from 9th to 11th Avenue, except for the very north block of 11th Avenue, because that's only 31 and change feet today. So we didn't want to make it wider. So we are keeping that one at 30 feet. Not much of a difference, but a little narrower. And then 13th Avenue will be 28 feet. That's a dead end on each side, a lot less traffic, a lot less parking. And then, as I mentioned, 12th Avenue will stay at 36 feet for the direct access to Highway 7, truck route, and state aid route. But even with that, we did want to take people's concerns seriously. Parking was a big concern, especially on 9th Avenue, but also 10th and 11th. So we went out and did a additional parking count study. We did one in October, but we did another one in December during final design. Even more counts. We went through the whole month, did 23 counts, 23 visits for each block. Went out different times of the day, different days of the week, included early mornings, nights, weekends, school pickup time, school drop off, to just try to capture everything. We even included some special events such as a Sunday morning church service, and then shows at the Center for the Arts on a Thursday evening. So feel like we captured every type of event, every day of the week, time. 9th Avenue wound up having the most cars, kind of as expected and what we heard. The average was consistently over 10 cars. And then Sunday morning church service, there was a lot of cars. That was the most cars we saw on any block at any time. It got up to 21 cars on one block. That block of 1st to 2nd and then 2nd to 3rd was, I believe, 17 cars during that time. But all other blocks had relatively low counts and never went above 10 cars per one block at any time. And no block, even 9th Avenue during the church service, reached its full capacity. Each block can fit at least 24 parked cars. So there was never a time where we saw it, they were fully lined from intersection to intersection on both sides of the street. So special events didn't seem to have a major impact other than the church service, but it still was within capacity of the parking on that block, and obviously a very short duration and with less commuter traffic on a Sunday morning. So all that being said, we didn't see the need to make special exceptions throughout the neighborhood, but still wanted to go just double check and see, because there is some blocks that have a lot of parking. So I want to double check that if there's 2 cars parking, and want to show everyone you can get 2 cars by each other when they're driving at the same time. So you can see this picture is on 15th Avenue North. that was reconstructed just a couple of years ago at 32 feet wide, which we're proposing to do most of the blocks. There's a car, sedan, and SUV parked on both sides of the street. Then there's a pickup truck and an SUV being able to pass each other. And I took a couple different angles of the shots, showing there's at least a foot or two of spacing between. Now, obviously, I know there's a request we're talking about, we won't be able to get a school bus and a UPS truck by at the same time, but that just doesn't happen all the time. And we're not always having cars parked on both sides of the street all the time. So we don't want to over design and create more costs for the city and taxpayers. We try to design for what's typical, and we felt like this is typical, and most of the time you will be able to get by with cars parked on the street. And the main goal, remember, for narrowing the roadway is to calm traffic. A lot of the complaints that we received through public input was speeding. And the best way to reduce speeding is to calm traffic flow. And the best way to do that is to narrow the roadways. So even if you do have to maybe wait, take turns, that helps slow traffic down. But most of the times you won't have to wait. You'll just have to slow down, which is the goal. Pedestrian improvements, the 13th Avenue North 400 block, we did send out a survey to those residents asking if they would be interested in not putting back the sidewalk that is currently there when we reconstruct the roadway, because it doesn't connect to anything on the north, south, east, or west. Like I said, it's kind of a dead end road, not a whole lot of foot traffic, but we wanted to make sure the residents were in favor of that, and overwhelmingly so. And that wasn't the case. It was a lack of support. Some residents were open to eliminating it, but several residents were strongly supporting to keep it. So we are going to be reconstructing and replacing it with the project with the rest of the street improvements. Regional trail crossings, not a whole lot has changed, but a few small changes. We'll have a couple of slides on those I'll go through. And then intersection curb bump outs, same thing, just a couple more changes. Biggest changes at 9th Avenue and 2nd Street, we're adding some curb bump outs. I know there was some public input about that right by the church. So we added those in, and we can go through that as well. So first, the regional trail crossing improvement at 9th and 1st. This is a new addition, relatively minor, but we are bumping out that corner of the ped ramp at the northwest corner of 1st Street and 9th Avenue, right by the regional trail there. So that'll make that crossing distance about 6 feet shorter and safer for pedestrians and bicyclists using the trail and also the sidewalk along 1st Street. And then continuing with the regional trail crossings, just going to the west, mid-block on 10th Avenue and 11th Avenue. This is essentially the same that we showed last time, with realigning the trail to be more perpendicular with the roadway, have a shorter crossing distance, less of a skew. But the major difference is, so now since we are not doing 28-foot wide streets anymore, we're at 32 feet. We still want to narrow these crossings as much as possible. So we're actually going to narrow these with curb bump outs mid-block at the crossings down to 26 feet wide. So there won't be any parking, obviously, at the ped crossings. There's not today, but 26 feet wide is still plenty of room for cars to get by each other, just no parking. And it will greatly reduce that crossing distance and make it safer for trail users. And then 12th Avenue and 2nd Street North, again, not a whole lot of changes here from last time. Main things we're doing is bumping down the intersection again to 26 feet wide at those crossings, both on 2nd and 12th Avenue. Combining the trail crossing, the regional trail crossing, and then the Metzold Field Trail into one crossing instead of having one in the middle of the intersection, and directing bicyclists over to force them down to that south leg of the intersection, putting in limestone blocks to block that path so they don't just cut across the intersection, restriping the crosswalks, and reinstalling the flashing stop signs, updating the trail crossing signs. We're also going to be paving the rest of the asphalt trail down to the bottom of the park at Metzold Field, since that's in pretty poor shape. The biggest change from last meeting, this was also some public input, resident input. We're adding a crosswalk on the north leg of the intersection and bumping in the curb there down to 26 feet. So for sidewalk users on 2nd Street North on that north side. There's a crossing there now too. Then we have some curb bump outs on 4th Street, which hasn't changed since preliminary, just at 12th Avenue and 10th Avenue to make some of those crossing distance shorter for pedestrians and slow down vehicle traffic, make it more visually that those drivers see that there's a crossing coming up instead of just the paint for the crosswalk blocks. And then the newest one that I mentioned before, this is out of our final design plans. This is 9th Avenue and 2nd Street North. So the church is in the bottom right corner. North is pointing to the right. We are bumping in the street again to 26 feet wide at the intersection on 9th Avenue, and then bumping in just on the north side of 2nd Street, bumping in by 3 feet to reduce that roadway down to 32 feet as well, to slow down the traffic there. So project schedule moving forward. So tonight we have our 3rd neighborhood meeting. Thank you all for joining. And then next week on Tuesday night at the regular city council meeting, we'll be asking council to approve the final plans and authorize bidding. And then we'll go out for bids, finalize the plans, go out for bids. And then on March 7th, open bids from contractors. March 18th, we'll go back to council, likely a consent agenda item. That will be the council ordering the public hearing on assessments. Now that we will have the actual contract amount from the low bidder, we'll know final assessment amounts at that time. You may notice I don't plan on talking about assessments much tonight because they haven't changed since preliminary. Still the same estimated amount. They won't change until we have actual bid prices from contractors. So we'll send out another notice in March, late March, early April. At that time, letting you know what that final assessment amount is. And it likely won't change much for all the single family residential properties, because if you recall, that is at a cap amount. So for the street improvements. So the only amount that really is going to change is that water and sewer service assessment, which was the smaller portion of your assessment. But again, updated amounts will come late March, early April with a letter, also inviting you to the 4th neighborhood meeting. Excuse me, a little error there. It should be neighborhood meeting 4 in early April. And then the week after will be the city council meeting where we have the public hearing on assessments, ask council to adopt the assessment roll and award the contract to the low bidder. Then likely early May, we would begin construction on phase 1, and then continue construction through the summer and fall, and then pick it up again in 2026 for phase 2, and then finish October, November of 2026. We do have a little more detailed construction phasing plan. We have a board out by the entryway, by the doors as well, if you want to look at it after the presentation here. But generally, we are going to be moving from the east side of the neighborhood to the west side of the neighborhood. So phase 1, which is all the sub phases circled and or outlined in red, that is going to be in 2025. That's going to include 9th Avenue North, 10th Avenue North, the 2 blocks of 3rd Street North that are being reconstructed, 4th Street North, the 1 block between 9th and 10th Avenue, and then the 2nd Street North mill and overlay. It might also include, it is going to include 11th Avenue North, the southern block with the deep sanitary sewer. But then from there on, it's going to depend on the contractor's progress. The rest of 11th Avenue North will either be late 2025 or early 2026. So you see I have a couple of flex phases here, broke that up. Basically, if the contractor's really doing well, progressing well, we're going to allow them to continue going north along 11th Avenue. We would let people know as soon as we can when we have an idea of if it's going to be going in late 2025 or early 2026. But generally, as of right now, we're thinking they'll probably get up to 3rd Street on 11th Avenue in 2025, and then north of 3rd Street would likely be 2026. But we will update everyone when we know more from the contractor and their schedule and their progress. And then phase 2, 2026, all the streets outlined in blue, all of 12th Avenue, all of 13th Avenue, and then 3rd Street reclaim and resurface. So project communication, if you haven't been to our website yet, I would encourage you to do so, hopkinsavenuesproject.com. You can sign up for updates, which will be sent out weekly during construction. We do send out updates every once in a while during the design phase. We sent out one for this meeting tonight. But we will send out updates on a weekly basis during construction, email and text if you choose to sign up for both. And then there's project context on there, project documents. We'll upload a video of this presentation along with all the boards and layouts that you see tonight. That'll all be uploaded to the website. And there's also some frequently asked questions. And yeah, updated schedule and construction updates will be posted to the website as well. That's all I have for my presentation. Again, my name is Nick. Eric is here with me tonight, city engineer, main contact for the city for the project, and then Josh Robbie will be our construction manager, sitting in the back. He'll be one of your main contacts during construction. Once that starts up and leading up to it, you'll probably be seeing some notices from him in the spring leading up to construction. And then we'll also have a lead inspector on site daily that will provide that contact info at the next neighborhood meeting in April. So with that, Emily, you can stop the recording. And if we have any questions from people online first, we'll take those.